When billionaire CEO Damen Moretti needs a fake wife to secure his inheritance, he never expects to hire a mysterious woman with deadly secrets. Lara Volkov agrees to the arrangement for her own dark reasons or revenge against the man who destroyed her family. But as they play the perfect couple for his grandmother, the line between performance and reality begins to blur. What starts as a cold business contract transforms into a passionate love story filled with betrayal, danger, and unexpected truth. Can two people who've built their lives on lies find something real together? Or will the secrets they're hiding destroy any chance at happiness? Asterisk, asterisk, let's begin another story where emotions, secrets, and fate collide. Asterisk, the champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, sending crystal fragments across Damen Moretti's pristine office like fallen stars. His grandmother's ultimatum still echoed in his ears from their phone call moments before. Marry within 6 months, or I'm giving the company to your cousin Vincent. 32 years old, worth $300 million, and he was being blackmailed by a 90-year-old woman who still called him Damencito and pinched his cheeks at family gatherings. The irony would have been amusing if his entire life's work wasn't hanging in the balance. Alex Brennan, his best friend and attorney, leaned against the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. She's serious this time, isn't she? Dead serious. Damen swept the glass fragments into his palm, watching blood bead where a shard nicked his skin. 20 years I've built this empire from the ground up, and she thinks marriage will somehow make me a better man. Maybe she has a point. Damen's laugh held no humor. Don't start with me, Alex. You know why I don't do relationships? The memory surfaced unbidden. Isabella, 3 years ago. Her tearful confession that she'd been feeding company secrets to his biggest competitor while sharing his bed. The betrayal had cut deeper than any business loss ever could. So what's the plan? Alex asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. I need a wife. Temporarily. Damen pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. Someone who understands this is purely business. No complications, no emotions, no chance of actually falling in love. Alex's tone carried a warning. Damen, this is insane. Even for you. Before Damen could respond, his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Mr. Moretti, there's a woman here about the position you posted. Should I send her up? Damen frowned. He hadn't posted any position. What position? The personal assistant role. She says it's urgent, and she has exactly what you need. Raise an eyebrow. Mysterious. I like her already. Send her up. Minutes later, the office door opened to reveal a woman who made Damen's breath catch in his throat. She wasn't conventionally beautiful in the plastic way of the socialites who usually threw themselves at him. This woman possessed something, far more danger-rousing, understated elegance that spoke of intelligence and secrets. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her charcoal suit was expensive, but not flashy. When their eyes met, he felt an unexpected jolt of electricity. Mr. Moretti. Her voice carried a slight accent he couldn't place. I'm Lara Volkov. I believe you need a wife. The silence stretched taut between them. Alex made a strangled sound. From his position by the window, I beg your pardon, Damen managed, stepped into the office with the confidence of someone who owned every room she entered. I know about your grandmother's ultimatum. I know about the company, the inheritance, and your very public aversion to marriage. I also know that Vincent has been quietly buying up shares through shell companies, preparing for when he inherits. Damen's blood turned to ice. That information was highly classified. How do you know things I shouldn't? She smiled, and it was sharp as a blade. That's what makes me perfect for this job. I'm very good at finding out what people don't want. Me too, no. She moved to his desk with fluid grace, pulling out a leather portfolio. I'm a corporate intelligence specialist. I've been watching your situation develop for weeks, waiting for the right moment to approach you. You're a spy. It wasn't a question. I prefer information architect. And right now, I'm your solution. She spread photographs across his desk. Images of Vincent meeting with board members, documents being exchanged, money changing hands. Your cousin isn't waiting for your grandmother to die naturally? He's been systematically undermining your position with the board, painting. You, as an unstable bachelor who can't be trusted with the family legacy. Damen studied the photographs, rage building in his chest. Vincent's betrayal shouldn't have surprised him, but seeing the evidence laid out so starkly still stung. "What's your price?" he asked quietly. $5 million for 6 months of marriage, plus a guarantee that, when this is over, certain legal troubles of mine disappear. What kind of legal troubles? The kind that make me very motivated to keep our arrangement discreet. Alex cleared his throat. Damen, this is brilliant, Damen finished. No. Never taking his eyes off Lara, there was something magnetic about her, something that made him want to unravel her secrets, layer by layer. When can you start? I already have. She pulled out a marriage certificate from her portfolio. We're flying to Vegas tonight. Your grandmother expects to meet her new granddaughter-in-law this weekend. Damen stared at the blank certificate, his heart hammering against his ribs. In all his carefully calculated business deals, he'd never felt this rush of adrenaline mixed with something dangerously close to anticipation. This is just business, he said, more to himself than to her. Lara's green eyes held secrets he suddenly, desperately wanted to uncover. Of course, Mr. Moretti, strictly business. But as she gathered her papers, he caught the faintest tremor in her hands. Whatever her game was, she wasn't as unaffected as she pretended to be. And that made her infinitely more dangerous than he'd bargained for. Vegas had never felt so surreal, standing in a chapel that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. Damen watched Lara sign their marriage certificate with the same detached precision she might use to close a hostile takeover. The Elvis impersonator who'd officiated their ceremony was counting his tip money in the corner, humming "Love Me Tender" off-key. "Well, Mrs. Moretti," Damen said, testing how the name sounded, "how does it feel to be married to a complete stranger?" Lara slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple platinum band that somehow looked like it belonged there. "Done, stranger. Things for money." But her voice carried an edge that suggested this wasn't entirely true. The flight back to New York passed in charged silence. Damen found himself stealing glances at her as she worked on her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard with surgical precision. When turbulence hit and she gripped the armrest, he noticed a small scar on her knuckle shaped like a crescent. "Moon? Nervous flyer?" he asked. "Nervous about tomorrow?" She closed the laptop and turned to face him fully. "Tell me about your grandmother. What makes her tick?" "Helena Moretti is the most formidable woman I've ever met. Real estate empire, from nothing after my grandfather died young. She's brilliant, ruthless, and has an uncanny ability to see through any deception." "Good thing I'm not deceiving her," Lara said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm just playing a role. Is there a difference?" Her pause was almost imperceptible. There's always a difference. The next morning, Damen stood in his penthouse kitchen, watching Lara make coffee, with the efficiency of someone who'd studied his preferences. She'd moved into the guest room the night before, but somehow her presence had already shifted the entire energy of his space. "Your grandmother called?" she said, handing him a cup. "She's moved dinner to tonight instead of Sunday. Apparently she's too excited to wait." "Of course she is." Damen tasted the coffee and blinked in surprise. It was perfect, stronger than his housekeeper made it, with just a hint of cinnamon. "How did you know I like it this way? I pay attention." She was already moving toward the door. "I'll need access to your closet. If I'm going to play your wife, I need to look the part." An hour later, she emerged from his bedroom wearing one of his button-down shirts over her own clothes. The sleeves rolled up to reveal delicate wrists. Something about seeing her in his shirt sent an unexpected heat through his veins. "We need to practice," she announced.
"Practice what?"
"Being married." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfumes, something subtle and expensive that made him want to lean in. Married couples have tells, little intimacies that can't be faked. Before he could respond, she reached up and straightened his tie, her fingers brushing against his throat. The simple touch sent electricity racing through his nervous system. "They know how each other takes their coffee," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "They stand close without thinking about it. They have inside jokes." Her hands lingered on his chest, and he found himself memorizing the way her lashes cast shadows on her cheeks. "What's our story?" he asked, his voice rougher than intended. "How did we meet? You tell me." Her eyes challenged him. How would Damen Moretti fall in love? The question hit him like a physical blow. He'd spent so many years building walls that he'd forgotten what it might feel like to let someone in. "I wouldn't," he said honestly. "I don't do love." Out. Something flickered across her face. He sat appointment. Relief. Then we'll say it was a whirlwind. Courtship. Business merger that became personal. Is that what this is? She stepped back, breaking the spell. "This is whatever we need it to be to convince your grandmother." That evening, the Moretti family estate in the Hamptons felt like stepping back in time. Helena had spared no expense, filling the dining room with white roses and candlelight. Vincent was already there when they arrived, his smile sharp as broken glass. "Well, well," Vincent drawled, rising from his chair. "The prodigal grandson returns, and with a wife, no less." Helena swept into the room like a queen, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. At 90, she commanded, "Attention, simply by existing, grandmother." Damen kissed her cheek, his hand finding Lara's automatically. The contact sent another jolt through him. "I'd like you to meet Lara." Helena studied Lara with the intensity of someone who'd built an empire by reading people. "So you're the woman who finally captured my grandson's heart." "Actually," Lara said, her voice warm but steady, "I think he captured mine." The lie came so naturally, delivered with such perfect sincerity, that Damen almost believed it himself. Helena's eyes lit up with genuine delight. How wonderful. "Tell me everything. How did you meet? When did you know?" As Lara spun their fictional love story, a chance meeting at a charity gala, a conversation about art that lasted until dawn, a proposal on a moonlit beach, Damen found himself wishing it were real. She painted their romance with such vivid detail that he could almost remember those moments that had never happened. Vincent watched the performance with growing irritation. "This is all very romantic, but isn't it convenient that she showed up just when you needed a wife to secure your inheritance?" The dining room fell silent. Helena's expression hardened. "Vincent, I'm just saying, grandmother, the timing is suspicious." "What do we really know about this woman?" Lara's hand found Damen's under the table, her fingers intertwining with his. The touch was electric, grounding him when he might have exploded at his cousin's accusation. "You're right to be cautious," Lara said calmly. "Family wealth attracts all kinds of people with questionable motives." Vincent leaned forward, smelling blood in the water. "Exactly my point, which is why," Lara continued, "I insisted on a prenup that gives me nothing if we divorce. I don't want Damen's money, Mr. Moretti. I have my own." She pulled out her phone and showed Vincent a bank statement that made his face pale. 8 figures in her name alone. "I'm in corporate intelligence," she explained. "I've built my own fortune by being very, very good at what I do. The last thing I need is to marry for money." Helena clapped her hands together in delight. "Oh, I like her already." As dinner progressed, Damen watched Lara work the room like a maestro conducting a symphony. She charmed his aunts with stories about her travels, impressed his uncles with her knowledge of international markets, and completely disarmed his grandmother with her quick wit and genuine warmth. But it was the quiet moments that undid him. The way she automatically refilled his wine glass. How she laughed at his stories like she'd never heard them before, even though she'd probably researched every detail of his life. The casual way. She rested her hand on his shoulder when she leaned in to whisper something that made him smile. "She's good," Vincent muttered as the evening wound down. "She's perfect," Helena corrected, pulling Lara aside for a private conversation on the terrace. Through the glass doors, Damen watched his grandmother gesture animatedly, while Lara listened with rapt attention. Whatever Helena was saying made Lara laugh, a real laugh, not the practiced society smile she'd worn all evening. "You're in trouble," Alex said, appearing at his elbow. "What do you mean? You're looking at her like she's real." Damen forced himself to turn away from the window. "She's an actress playing a role." "I'm just admiring her technique, right?" Alex's tone suggested. He wasn't buying it for a second. "Just remember, when this is over," she disappears. Back to whatever shadowy world she came from. Don't make this complicated. But as Damen watched Lara throw her head back in genuine laughter at something his grandmother said, he had the sinking feeling it was already too late. Complicated was exactly what this was becoming. The nightmare always started the same way. Lara was 8 years old again, crouched in a Moscow apartment while her father's enemies pounded on the door. She could hear her mother's muffled sobs from the bedroom where she was bleeding out from, a gunshot wound that was meant for her husband. She woke gasping in Damen's guest room, her silk nightgown drenched in sweat. The clock read 3:17 a.m. Down the hall, she could hear movement. Damen was awake too. This was her third week as Mrs. Moretti, and the performance was becoming harder to maintain. It's not because the role was difficult, but because the lines between acting and reality had started to blur in ways that terrified her. She found him in his study, still dressed in yesterday's shirt, surrounded by financial reports and empty whiskey glasses. "Can't sleep either?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, and she saw something raw in his expression before he masked it. "Just working at 3 in the morning. Time doesn't matter when you're trying to save an empire." She moved into the room, drawn by the vulnerability she glimpsed beneath his carefully constructed armor. "The board meeting is tomorrow. Vincent's making his move." "How do you know that?" "Because I've been watching him." She settled into the chair across from his desk. "It's called an emergency session. Claims to have evidence that our marriage is fraudulent." Damen's jaw tightened. "What kind of evidence?" "Photos of us together. Or rather, the lack of intimacy in them. A body language expert's analysis of our public appearances. Financial records showing the $5 million that transferred into my account the day after we married." "How did he get access to your?" Damen stopped, realization dawning. "You let him find it." "I needed to know how far he'd go." Lara leaned forward, her green eyes intense. "He's desperate, Damen. Desperate enough to hire a private investigator to follow us, to bribe bank officials for our records. But he made a mistake." She pulled out a folder thick with documents. "In his eagerness to destroy you, he's exposed his own illegal activities. The shell companies, the bribed board members, the forged documents. I have enough evidence to put him away for fraud and embezzlement." Damen stared at the papers, then at her. "You've been investigating my family? I've been protecting your interests. That's what you're paying me for, is it?" He stood abruptly, moving around the desk until he was standing directly in front of her. "Because lately, I can't tell what's real and what's performance." The air between them crackled. With tension, Lara rose slowly, bringing them face to face. "What do you mean?" "The way you laugh at my grandmother's stories. How you remember that I take my coffee black, but like sugar in my tea. The way you—" he reached up, his fingers barely grazing her cheek. "The way you look at me sometimes, like you're seeing something no one else has ever noticed." Her breath hitched. "Damen, tell me it's all an act. Tell me you feel nothing when I touch you." The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Then Lara did something that shattered every assumption he'd made about her. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was fierce, desperate, full of weeks of suppressed longing and carefully buried desire. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as he backed her against the bookshelf. "This is a mistake," she whispered against his lips. "I know." His hands tangled in her hair, pulling it free from its careful arrangement. "I don't care. You will." But even as she said it, she was kissing him again, deeper this time, with a hunger that matched his own. They broke apart only when the need for air became desperate. Lara's lipstick was smeared, her hair wild, and she'd never looked more beautiful. "We can't do this," she said, but she didn't move away from him. Why not? 'Cause she closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, he saw fear there. Real, raw fear. "Because I'm not who you think I am." Before he could ask what she meant, she was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of her perfume and the taste of regret on his lips. The next morning brought Vincent's board meeting and the battle for control of Moretti Industries. Damen sat at the head of the conference table, with Lara beside him, both of them the picture of married composure. No one watching would guess that 12 hours ago they'd been pulling each other's clothes off in his study. Vincent presented his evidence with theatrical flair, painting Damen as a fraud who'd hired a woman to deceive his own grandmother. The board members listened with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. "This is all very interesting," Helena said, when Vincent finished his presentation. She'd insisted on attending the meeting, despite the family's protests. "But I have some evidence of my own?" She nodded to her assistant, who distributed photographs around the table, images of Damen and Lara that Vincent's investigator had missed, stolen moments that looked startlingly intimate and real. "These were taken by my security team," Helena explained. "Notice how they look at each other when they think no one is watching? The way she straightens his tie without thinking about it. How he orders her favorite wine before she asks for it." Damen studied the photos with growing amazement. In every single one, they looked like a couple genuinely in love. Had they really been so unconsciously affectionate, or was Lara just that good an actress? "Furthermore," Helena continued, "I've done my own investigation into Vincent's activities." She slid another folder across the table. "Corporate espionage, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit fraud. Should I continue?" Vincent's face went ash white. "Can't prove any of that." "Actually, I can." Lara spoke for the first time, her voice calm and deadly. "Because I'm the one who gathered the evidence." The room erupted in chaos. Board members demanded explanations. Vincent accused everyone of conspiracy. Helena simply smiled like a cat. "Who'd cornered a very large mouse?" Vote, Helena announced over the noise. "Will proceed as scheduled. All in favor of maintaining Damen as CEO?" The hands rose one by one until Vincent sat alone in his opposition. "Meeting adjourned," Helena declared. "Vincent, clean out your office. Security will escort you from the building." As the room emptied, Helena approached Damen and Lara. "That was quite a performance, both of you. Grandmother, don't look so worried, darling." Helena patted his cheek. "I've known this was a business arrangement from the beginning." Damen's blood turned to ice. "Because I'm the one who hired her." The world tilted sideways. Damen stared at his grandmother, then at Lara, who couldn't meet his eyes. "I needed to know if you were capable of letting someone in," Helena continued conversationally. "And I needed someone skilled enough to expose Vincent's treachery." Lara was perfect for both purposes. "You've been working for my grandmother this whole time." Damen's voice was deadly quiet. Lara finally looked at him, and the pain in her eyes was unmistakable. "Damen, I can explain. Can you?" He stepped back as if she'd struck him. "Which part was real, Lara? Any of it?" "Everything," she whispered. "Everything was real." He was already walking away, leaving her standing in the empty boardroom with the weight of her betrayal crushing down around her. Lara found Damen on the roof of his building 3 days later. He was standing at the edge, not suicidal but lost, staring out at the city lights like they held answers to questions he couldn't voice. "Helena told me you'd be here," she said, her heels clicking against the concrete as she approached. "Come to deliver your final report?" His voice was bitter ice. "Mission accomplished, I assume?" The naive billionaire fell for the pretty spy. "Don't." The word came out sharper than she intended. "You have every right to hate me, but don't pretend this was all manipulation." He turned to face her, and the raw pain in his eyes made her chest tight, wasn't it? "You got paid to marry me, Lara. You got paid to make me fall in love with you. I got paid to protect you." Moved closer, desperate to make him understand. Helena was terrified that Vincent would destroy everything you'd built. She knew you'd never accept help willingly, so she hired me to get close enough to gather evidence. And the rest? The coffee preferences, the inside jokes, the way you kissed me like your life depended on it? Her composure finally cracked. The rest was me forgetting every rule I've ever lived by. The wind whipped her hair around her face. As she struggled to find words for feelings she'd never had to explain before. "I've been selling pieces of myself for money since I was 16, she said quietly. "Different identities, different lies, all in service of survival. I thought this would be just another job. But you looked at me like I was worth something more than my usefulness. You made me coffee in the morning without being asked. You bought me books because you noticed I liked to read." Her voice broke slightly. "You made me remember what it felt like to be human." Damen studied her face in the moonlight, searching for any trace of deception. "Who are you really?" "My father." was Alexei Volkov. Does that name mean anything to you? Stoneman's sharp intake of breath told her it did. The arms dealer. He died in a car bomb in Moscow 15 years ago. It's not a car bomb. Vincent's business partners. She wrapped her arms around herself against the night chill. My father wasn't just an arms dealer. He was laundering money for American companies that wanted to do business in Russia without getting their hands dirty. Your cousin was one of his biggest clients. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Vincent killed your father. Vincent gave the order. I've spent 15 years gathering proof, building a case that could never be thrown out on technicalities. She pulled out a flash drive. Everything is here. Bank records, recorded conversations, photographic evidence, enough to put him away. For life. Why didn't you just turn him in? Why this elaborate charade? Her laugh was bitter, because Vincent has friends in very high places. Friends who made sure the first 3 times I tried to expose him, the evidence mysteriously disappeared, and witnesses changed their stories. So you needed to get close to the family, close to me. I needed protection. Helena Moretti's protection. Lara met his eyes steadily. But I also needed Vincent to think he was winning. If he believed he was about to inherit everything, he'd get careless. Desperate people make mistakes. And I was just collateral damage in your revenge plot. You were supposed to be. The admission hung between them like a blade. But then you had to go and be decent. Kind. You had to make me care. About you. Damen was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd told him. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Show me the evidence. They spent the next 4 hours in his study, going through 15 years of meticulous investigation. Bank transfers linking Vincent to Russian organized crime. Audio recordings of him ordering hits on business rivals. Photographs of meetings that should never have taken place. Jesus Christ, Damen breathed. Staring at a photo of Vincent shaking hands with a man Lara identified as her father's killer. He's a monster. Yes. Lara's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she handled the documents. And he's been living in your family, sitting at your dinner table, pretending to care about your grandmother while planning to destroy everything she built. Why didn't Helena tell me? Because she knew you'd try to handle it yourself. She knew you'd confront Vincent directly and probably get yourself killed. Lara turned to face him fully. She loves you too much to risk losing you to your own nobility. Something shifted in Damen's expression. The anger was still there, but it was directed outward now, at Vincent, at the situation, not at her. What happens now? Now we finish this? She stood, smoothing down her skirt with steady hands. Vincent thinks he's won. He believes you'll divorce me in disgrace, and he'll swoop in to console Helena and claim his inheritance. Instead, tomorrow morning, the FBI will arrest him for racketeering and conspiracy to commit murder. And us? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and pain. There is no us, Lara said quietly. There never was. Not the kind of woman who gets happy endings, Damen. I'm the kind who destroys everything she touches. That's not true, isn't it? She gathered her papers with mechanical precision. I've lied to you from the moment we met. I've manipulated your feelings for my own purposes. I've used your trust to get close to your family. You've also saved my company, exposed a murderer, and what?
Right.
Made you fall in love with a ghost? Her smile was heartbreaking. I'm not the woman you think I am. I'm not gentle, or kind, or worthy of someone like you. I'm a weapon, Damen, a very pretty, very dangerous weapon. She moved toward the door, but his voice stopped her. Lara, she turned back, hope and fear warring in her expression. When Vincent is arrested tomorrow, when this is all over, what will you do? Disappear, like I always do. What if I asked you to stay? The question shattered something inside her. She'd dreamed of hearing those words from him, but now that he'd spoken them, she knew she could never accept. You're not thinking clearly. When the adrenaline fades, when you remember how this started, you'll realize I was right. And if I don't, she smiled sadly, memorizing his face one last time, then you'll break my heart all over again. The door closed behind her with quiet finality. leaving Damen alone with the evidence of his cousin's crimes and the devastating realization that he was in love with a woman who might never believe she deserved to be loved back. 6 months later, Damen stood in the same Moscow cemetery where Lara's parents were buried. The headstones were simple granite, weathered by harsh Russian winters, but someone had left fresh white roses. "She comes here every year," Helena said beside him, her breath visible in the cold air. "On the anniversary of their deaths?" "How long have you known where she was?" "Since the day she disappeared from New York." His grandmother's knowing smile hadn't dimmed despite her recent health scare. "Did you really think I'd let my granddaughter-in-law vanish without keeping tabs on her?" Damen's heart clenched at the casual way Helena referred to Lara as family. "She's not actually your granddaughter-in-law. Our marriage was fake, remember?" "Was it?" Helena studied his face with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Then why are you still wearing your ring?" He looked down at the platinum band he hadn't been able to remove, even after their annulment was finalized. "Have it, love," Helena corrected gently. "The same reason you spent 6 months tracking down every lead, calling in every favor, just to find her." The cemetery gate creaked open behind them. Damen turned and felt his breath catch as Lara appeared, bundled in a thick coat, her cheeks red from the cold. She froze when she saw them, her green eyes wide with shock. "Damen." His name fell from her lips like a prayer. "What are you doing here? Looking for my wife?" "Ex-wife." The annulment was a legal technicality. He moved toward her slowly, afraid she might bolt like a spooked deer. "Turns out you can't annul a marriage when both parties entered it with genuine feelings." "I never said I had genuine feelings. You didn't have to." He stopped just close enough to see the gold flecks in her eyes. "You left your resignation letter on my desk, along with the annulment papers. Do you remember what you wrote?" Her throat worked as she swallowed. "Damen, don't. You wrote that you were sorry for lying about everything except one thing." Reached into his coat, pulling out the letter that had been folded and refolded so many times. The creases were permanent. "That you loved me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks, freezing in the bitter air. "I shouldn't have written that." "Why not?" "Because it's true. Because it doesn't matter." The words exploded out of her. "I'm not the kind of person who gets to." "Be happy, Damen. I have blood on my hands. I've done things that would horrify you. Try me. I killed 3 men in Budapest 2 years ago." Helena made a soft sound of surprise, but Damen's expression didn't change. "Were they trying to kill you?" "Yes, but were they the same men who murdered that family of refugees you were protecting?" Lara's eyes widened. "How did you know about Budapest?" "I hired investigators too. Turns out you've spent the last 15 years using your skills to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Refugees, trafficking victims, witnesses who needed to disappear." He stepped closer. "You're not a weapon, Lara. You're a guardian angel with a very sharp sword. That's not true?" "Let me tell you what I found." He pulled out his own folder. "Maria Santos, the single mother you helped escape her abusive ex-husband. The Chen family, who you relocated after they witnessed a murder. David Kim, the accountant who was going to testify against his mob boss employers until you gave him a new identity and a fresh start." Lara stared at him in shock. "You investigated me? Fell in love with you? There's a difference." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I needed to understand who you really are beneath all the lies and masks. And what I found was a woman who spent her entire adult life saving people. I'm broken, Damen. I have nightmares. I don't know how to be normal. I don't want normal." His voice was fierce with conviction. "I want you. Nightmare secrets. Sharp edges and all." Helena cleared her throat delicately. "Perhaps I should mention that your annulment was never actually processed." They both turned to stare at her. "The paperwork seems to have been lost in the system," she continued with innocent eyes. "Terribly inefficient, these government offices." "Grandmother," Damen said slowly, "did you interfere with our annulment? I may have made a few phone calls. It's nothing illegal, mind you, just bureaucratic delays." She smiled serenely. "After all, I've grown quite fond of my granddaughter-in-law." Lara laughed through her tears, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. You magnificent, manipulative woman. I prefer romantically invested, Helena replied. Now, are you? 2. Going to stand here arguing in a freezing cemetery, or are you going to kiss and make up so we can all go inside for some proper Russian tea? Damen looked at Lara, his heart hammering against his ribs. What do you say, Mrs. Moretti? Ready to try being married for real this time? Are you sure? Her voice was barely a whisper. Once I stay, I won't be able to leave again. I don't. Think my heart could survive it, then don't leave. He pulled her into his arms, and she melted against him like she'd finally come home. Build something with me instead, something real. I don't know how to build. I only know how to tear things down, and it's a good thing you married an architect. When he kissed her this time, it tasted like promises and second chances. Like coffee shared in morning sunlight and laughter that wasn't performed for an audience. Like all the tomorrows they were finally brave enough to claim. I love you, she whispered against his lips. God help me. I love you so much it terrifies. Me, good, he murmured back. I was getting tired of being the only one scared out of his mind. Helena watched them with satisfaction, already planning the real wedding she'd insist on throwing. Because some love stories, she knew, were worth every manipulation it took to make them happen. 2 years later, Damen woke to the sound of Lara, singing in the shower, her voice carrying the Russian lullaby she'd hummed during her nightmares until they'd gradually faded away. The morning light painted golden squares across their bed. Somewhere in the kitchen, you could hear Helena bossing their housekeeper around as she prepared breakfast for the family gathering. Their real family now, the one they'd chosen. And fought for and built together, brick by careful brick. He found his wedding ring on the nightstand, the real one this time, engraved with the date they'd remarried in Helena's garden, surrounded by everyone who mattered. Lara's ring was beside it, and seeing them together still made his chest warm with wonder. She emerged from the bathroom wrapped in his shirt, her hair damp and her face glowing with the kind of happiness that couldn't be faked. Good morning. Husband, she said, and this time there was no sarcasm in it, only love so deep it took his breath away. Good morning, wife. He pulled her down onto the bed, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. Ready for another day of being disgustingly happy? I'm still getting used to it, she admitted, tracing patterns on his chest. Sometimes I wake up expecting this to be another mission, another lie, and then I remember that you chose me. Not the version of me I thought you needed, but all of me. Even the broken parts. Especially the broken parts. Kissed her forehead, her cheek, the corner of her mouth. They make you who you are. Helena's making blini again, she said against his lips. She says the baby needs proper Russian food. His hand moved to her still flat stomach, wonder-filling. His chest. Think she'll teach him to be as manipulative as she is? Definitely. It's genetic. From downstairs came the sound of Helena calling for them, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd orchestrated the greatest love story she'd ever seen. We should go, Lara said, but she made no move to leave his arms. In a minute. Damen held her closer, grateful for the miracle of ordinary morning light and the woman who'd taught him that love wasn't something to fear but something to build a life around. Because some contracts he'd learned were worth more than the paper they were written on. So marriages began with lies, but grew into the most honest thing too, people could share. And some love stories started with the simple question of what happened when a man who'd sworn off love met a woman who'd forgotten how to believe in it. The answer, it turned out, was everything. *like. If you love intense romance stories, EVCREB. For a weekly new romance content, COMNT, your favorite part of the story, the end.